It's exciting. It's that time of year again. The predictions for 2023. I am predicting the supernatural. That does not mean it's going to come up. However, there's a good chance that it will come up, and what I tell you in this video will fit lots of other questions. Let's see how I would plan that answer. At number one, you're going to talk about why Shakespeare starts the play with the witches. Well, he wants to flatter King James. We know he's really interested in witchcraft, participated in witch trials himself, wrote the go-to text on it called Demonology. So, flattery of the king. The king is sponsoring Shakespeare's acting company, Kerchit. However, he's also using the witches to say, look, these are agents of the devil. The devil is evil. It's even got evil in the word devil. That's how evil the devil is. If you kill the king, you will commit regicide, and that is evil, and you will go to hell. Nobles at court, because this is being performed at court, not at the Globe. Nobles, don't kill the king. Bad idea. The next reason is he wants to explore patriarchal attitudes to women. So these witches are women. Women are traditionally seen as more evil than men because Eve took the fruit from the forbidden tree of knowledge of good and evil. The serpent encouraged her. She ate the fruit and then she corrupted Adam. Women, very, very bad. Men, bad. And so that's the patriarchal view that women are temptresses. That's important because it's going to inform our opinion of Lady Macbeth, who will become the temptress, the one who is pushing Macbeth towards murder. Or is she? We'll see later. Number two, this is a tragedy. Shakespeare is writing a tragedy, playing with the Greek tradition. In Greek myths, your fate was decided by the three fates. They worked out how long you would live when you would die. And that was it. They cut the thread to represent your life. You died then. You could not avoid that fate. In Greek tragedy, the hero tries desperately to avoid their fate, and their hamartia, their weakness, leads them to meet their fate. Everything they do to escape the fate leads to them meeting it. Shakespeare completely reverses that. When Macbeth finds out his fate to be king, he does everything he can to get there, not to avoid it. And so the point that Shakespeare's making here is that the tragedy of Macbeth isn't the gods imposing a fate upon him, it is his own free will. He could have just waited to become king, but he didn't. He chose evil, and that's the Christian context here. So the fates don't actually get you to do anything, and the witches don't actually get Macbeth to do anything. More of that later, it's going to be very relevant. Next, we come back to the patriarchal idea, and these poor witches are described as having beards. Why is that important? Well, there's the joke, because all the women would have been played by men, so they got the bearded dudes on to be the witches, and the clean-shaven teenage male actors to be the wives. So, what's Shakespeare saying here? He's saying, look, if you're a woman in our society, you can only gain status really through marriage. And in order to gain status through marriage, you either have to be rich from a rich family, or you have to be super attractive. The witches don't have wealth, they don't have attractiveness, so how else are they going to get power and influence? And later on, when we get down here, you will see that they're actually interested in Macbeth because they believe he is interested in them as people. They want a connection, but of course, they're not going to get it because they are just demonized as evil, even though they never do anything evil to Macbeth. They only ever tell him the future. So, this is going to be important because in a tragedy we have to work out what the hamartia is of the hero. What is their fatal flaw, their weakness? Is it ambition? You'll know in my videos that I argue it's not, but it doesn't matter. Most people believe it's ambition. You can argue that. Or is it Lady Macbeth? You decide. She says "Come, you spirits that tend on mortal thoughts, unsex me here." So you can use that to argue that she aligns herself with the witches. You could argue that she thinks the witches are like the spirits, that she is summoning them. She's summoning evil spirits because she embraces what the witches represent. Or you could argue that the witches are not spirits, and Lady Macbeth is deliberately choosing supernatural influence, evil, to try to get her husband to become king. Remember, though, that they're not going to make Macbeth king. They're just going to give her the masculine traits needed to go through with killing Duncan. So she decides she wants to kill Duncan first, and only later does she get Macbeth to do it. So the influence of the supernatural there isn't the supernatural influencing Lady Macbeth. It's Lady Macbeth already deciding that she's going to be evil and then asking for supernatural help. And that's important because Shakespeare keeps coming back to the point that Macbeth and Lady Macbeth are both responsible for their own downfall, because that's his message to the nobles. You are responsible for what you do. God will hold you accountable. If you commit suicide, you're going to go to hell. Now, we come to this really interesting line that Lady Macbeth says. So she'd said to Macbeth, "Look, leave all this night's great business in my dispatch. Leave it to me. I'm going to do the murder. Like, you can just chill out. All you have to do is agree. Right? I will carry out the murder." Now, she says this in soliloquy. Soliloquy means that the character is saying their innermost thoughts on stage. So this is the truth. Yeah, and the truth is, she would have killed Duncan had he not looked too much like her father. So she genuinely would have killed him if he hadn't looked like her dad. Now, this is part of the plot of a brilliant short story, which you can find online, written by a guy called James Thurber, where he redoes the play as a whodunit, a murder mystery. Now, the point of this is, that's a flipping strange thing to say. Like, why is that? So you could decide that it is the supernatural that stops Lady Macbeth killing Duncan. The supernatural kind of superimposes this image of her father over Duncan to stop her. And so we can see the supernatural agents here as trying to prevent the killing of Duncan. Or you can say no, they want Macbeth to kill Duncan. If Lady Macbeth kills Duncan, they haven't attacked the patriarchy. They need to corrupt men. Men need to be attacked here. It's no good attacking a woman because the witches are women. It's the male power in the land that they want to attack. You decide which way you want to go with this, or if what I'm telling you is bizarre, you can leave that out of your essay. We go to number 6. This, of course, is a famous scene where we have to decide, is Macbeth going mad, or is there actually a vision put before him by the witches? If you've gone with the idea that supernatural powers have transposed an image of Lady Macbeth's father onto Duncan, well, then you can easily say, yep, supernatural powers are putting this dagger in front of Macbeth. It's not his heat-oppressed brain, it's not his senses deceiving him, it's the supernatural. Or not. You can say, no, it's just in his head. Now, this leads him towards killing Duncan. If it is the supernatural, it's an attack on the male power structure, killing the king, attack on the patriarchy. So you can play that whichever way you like. Next, we have a definite supernatural presence here, the ghost of Banquo. I say definite, it could all be in Macbeth's head because no one else sees the ghost, but the supernatural could be exposing Macbeth, leading to his downfall. Let me explain. When Macbeth kills Duncan, he still becomes king, even though people suspect that he might have had something to do with it because he killed the grooms before they could be interviewed, but only Macduff has chosen not to come to the feast, the coronation feast. In other words, all the other nobles are saying, well, you might have played most foully for this, but we'll allow it because you've just saved the whole country from this Viking invasion from the Norwegians. So you're probably going to be a really powerful king. We will stick with you. But what changes that in a moment is Macbeth. Never shake thy gory locks at me. Thou canst not say I did it. Confession. Nobody knows that Banquo is dead. They all assume he is confessing to the gory locks of Duncan, to the crime that he did. Now, this is much different. If he now publicly says in front of everybody, by the way, I've just killed Duncan, which is what this sounds like, he loses support because people can't go along with it in private anymore. It's now public, and either you take one side, the side of good, or the side of evil, and the nobles start to desert Macbeth from that point. This is the turning point in his tragedy, and it is brought about by Banquo's ghost. You decide whether this is an internal vision or whether this is actually a supernatural presence. I'm going to go, for the point of this video, with supernatural presence. Shakespeare is suggesting that God will work in all sorts of ways to attack anyone who considers killing the rightful king. King James believed in the divine right of kings, and so this is part of God's punishment, driving both Macbeth and Lady Macbeth mad with supernatural influences. Supernatural doesn't have to be evil, of course, it just means extraordinarily beyond the natural world. God can do that, apparently. So, now we come to the witches themselves. So I've already told you that Shakespeare has really wanted to play a part with the witches in his play because that's going to flatter King James, but he is subtly undermining this. Double, double, toilet, trouble, fire, burn and cauldron bubble. Double, double, toilet, trouble, fire, burn and cauldron bubble. Very childish, not very scary. I don't know why they're here at all. See what I mean? It's the trochaic meter. It's actually got a posh name, trochaic tetrameter. And basically everything else we know is an iambic pentameter. And yet the witches are given this childish rhythm. Shakespeare is undermining the idea that they have real power to tell Macbeth what to do. They don't. All they have is the power of prophecy. I say all, that's pretty amazing. You know, if you had that gift, it should be pretty scary, wouldn't it? If you could see into the future and other people's lives, you'd see stuff that was not very pleasant. So the witches don't actually do that. They hide all the unpleasantness from Macbeth. So they say to him, you're going to be totally safe until Birnam Wood marches up the hill, which is true. You're going to be totally safe because no one who's born of a woman can kill you, which is kind of true. So in a way, they're being quite kind towards Macbeth, like, this is really bad, I don't know how to tell you this, I'm just going to hide it from you. Now, most people do not interpret the witches that way, but you should interpret the witches that way because of number 9, and nobody else teaches this as far as I know, but the witches' leader is Hecate. And Hecate appears and says, what the hell are you doing with Macbeth? What are you messing around with Macbeth for? Don't be interfering in Macbeth's life. She tells them off. And she says, Macbeth loves for his own ends. He's meeting you. He's pretending to love you for himself, not for you. So the witches are thinking, hey, Macbeth's coming to see us again. Doesn't mind about the beards. He wants to be in our company. We'll keep him sweet by giving him prophecies of the future, but not making them too negative. So everybody chucks that out of the play because the witches are evil. We don't want that. But actually, they're quite sympathetic people. They actually want Macbeth's love and attention. And they give him these prophecies in the hope of winning that love, as well as, you could definitely argue, they want to mess with his mind and influence his behaviour. Alternatively, you could argue that they're there just to tell him the truth, and everything that then happens is all his own responsibility, all in his own head. I really like that idea, but you don't have to run with it. But if you do, that is the quote that proves the witches definitely want some attention from Macbeth. They think he really wants to be with them. Okay, Lady Macbeth. She is obviously driven mad, but when she does the sleepwalking scene, she never mentions the witches. She never mentions the murdering ministers that unsexed her. So that now seems to be just figurative language. It just seems to be her way of talking herself into a moment of courage where she's going to be able to go through with the killing of Duncan. In her own mind, at her most vulnerable, she keeps thinking about the death of the death of Duncan, all the blood that's on her hands, metaphorically and literally. The Thane of Fife had a wife. She's worried about what Macbeth is doing, killing innocent people like Lady Macduff. She's not worried about the witches. She's worried about her guilt and her husband and what he's going to keep doing. So her suicide in the end is actually a rejection of Macbeth and the evil that he has become. She also feels guilty because she believes, probably quite rightly, that she has created that evil in Macbeth. She has pushed him to act on his evil desires, whereas she could have been the check on his evil desires. Remember, he said, I have no spur to prick the sides of my intent, but vaulting ambition. In other words, vaulting ambition wasn't enough. He needed the extra push. And so he wrote to Lady Macbeth, knowing that she would give him that extra push. Come on, Macbeth, let's kill Duncan, let's do it. She even went so far, remember, as to say, I will do it for you, you great coward. And she would have done if he hadn't looked like her dad. We've done that. So, now we come to the punishment that Macbeth gets. So he becomes nihilistic. He decides that God is an idiot writing the script. Life is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. So he's completely blasphemous. He turns completely against God. He doesn't say God doesn't exist. He says, God's an idiot. I don't like his script. I ain't following it anymore. But he is now looking for fear. Such a one am I to fear. The final battle at the end, he's actually looking for the person who's going to kill him. Why does he want to die? Not because he wants to end it all. It's because he wants to feel genuine emotions again. The supernatural influence has stopped him feeling emotions. He wants to feel that fear again. So in a way, he welcomes death. He's still afraid of death, but that's what he wants. He wants that sense of fear. He wants to feel human again. And now we come to the end. The supernatural powers. Macbeth is killed. His head is put on a pole. He serves as a warning. The dead butcher, the fiend-like queen. Malcolm becomes king. But when the witches saw into the seeds of time and said which grain would grow and which would not, they said Fleance would become king. And so many scholars look at this and they think, well, how will Fleance become king? If you've seen the 1970s Roman Polanski film, you'll know that his interpretation is Fleance will go back to the witches and then will follow their prophecies. And so there is the possibility that the witches' influence will continue. Or that's just the natural order. That's just what the future will bring. It will happen anyway. Fleance doesn't have to do anything terrible in order to become king. So you can choose which avenue you want here. Do you want to suggest the witches have complete control? Or do you want to suggest the witches have no control at all? I'm going that way, but you can equally go that way. There's your evidence. Knock this exam out of the park.